Hi, and welcome to ScatersLandingTV.com. I'm your host, Chris Bartlett. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to compare and contrast a product from Jackson and a product from Riedell. Both of these skates sell for between $95 and about $110, depending on whether you go with a youth model or the adult model. So there's about a $10 range in there, but if you think of them as just over the $100 mark, you'll be safe, okay? Over here on my left, your right, is the Jackson Mystique. And over here on my right, your left, is the Riedell 15, or the adult version, which is called the 115. Okay? It's important for you to know that when you're trying on skates, I always recommend taking out the insole. They all pop out. Occasionally some company or some model will have the insole glued out, but they generally pop out in the arch area if you have a slotted screwdriver or just any type of a flat type of a blade that you can get under there. Okay, so I'm taking out that Mystique insole, and I'm going to do the same thing on the inside of my Riedell 15. Okay? Okay. Let's start with similarities. Okay, you can see there is some attempt in the Riedell product to glue down that insole. Popped out pretty easily, so I'm not so sure how successful that aspect is. It's important to note too, Jackson put a little bit of a foam or a little bit of a sort of a heel lift. Sometimes this helps snug up the heel a little bit and takes some of the pressure off. Occasionally a skater can be prone to roll back a little bit. So in terms of flexibility, both products are pretty flexible. I think the one that seems to retain its shape better is the Mystique. I definitely think this is a little bit, seems to be a little bit hardier. This one seems to fold a little bit more. So anyhow, but in both cases, they have a basic liner. I do not consider this an actual, tailored or structured footbed. There's nothing particularly heel hugging or arch lifting or arch supports or anything like that. So if you need something for correcting the foot posture, that's another issue, okay? So we got the liners. We're going to look inside the Mystique. Obviously, the one thing you'll notice right away is we have sort of a foam tongue here. Pretty hardy tongue. This panel on the front is generally a reinforcement panel. You can see it's the second part. What that does is helps when the laces cut across at the flex notch area and in the upper where you're trying to keep that skate secure. That reinforcement panel can help from something that's called lace bite, which is almost like getting a little bit of a callus across the shin there from just too much pressure from laces. Let's look at the tongue and the inside of the Riedell 15. Okay. Definitely got a beefier tongue. I think on the tongue, I would probably give the tongue quality, my choice would be with this Riedell 15 or 115. I think it's just a little bit meatier. I think that would hold up a little bit more than the foam. I think you can see both of those. Okay. I have a little bit of concern that this tongue wants to fold quite readily there, although maybe it is designed to do that so that the lower part of the tongue will stay, and when the skater bends and flexes into it, maybe it's going to allow that tongue to stay. I am concerned that maybe that tongue's going to pop down when you flex on it and push into the tops of the toes, which is not something that's very fun. So we probably can do a whole segment on that alone. It is important to note here too, coming up the boots, let me try to neaten this up a little bit, that Jackson has gone with the flex notch, and Riedell has chosen to stay away from having a flex notch. I do find that a little bit interesting because I do find that flex notches have been added to almost all products at this point. It does allow a little bit more of sort of a hinging, or when you bend, it allows a little bit more flexing of the upper for flexion and range of motion, and just better range of movement when you press into the ankles and the toes to rock through turns, to push into a spin, to go up into the air and jump, which of course we do 100,000 times a day when you're freestyling. Okay, so in terms of weight of the product, this is a judgment call. I would say it's pretty similar. Maybe the Riedell's weighing in just a little bit more. Okay, they both have 3 hooks in the upper. They both have a PVC sole. Okay, I would say in terms of sole maintenance, that pretty much takes away any of the aspects of damage that can happen to a leather sole. As we know, leather is not a big fan of water, so a PVC sole is just a nice way of securing a blade on, keeping the boot a little lighter, and not having to worry about the issue of maintenance of a leather sole. It is important to note most upper end skates do have a leather sole, however, and that's just kind of traditional out of boot making. Alright, I am going to do one last test to these products, which I'm going to use the Riedell fitting device, so thanks to Riedell for that. I'm going to test how much the blade, so if I'm here, okay, on my blade, when I rock, I'm looking to see, by the time I hit that front toe pick, see how much blade, how far up the blade I would have to skate before that. You can see the lift under the heel in the back there. Okay, that's the amount of rock. It has a lot to do with how easily one accesses the toe picks. You know, at this point, you're in basic skills, you're just beyond being an entry-level skater, but you don't have like a mad set of skills or anything. So it is important that you have a pretty stable balance throughout the center of the blade and some rock, but we don't want to be able to get to those toe picks too easily. I do think this is quite a bit of lift, and I'm not sure this is the largest balance point on this blade. All right, let's compare to our Mystique. Okay, I think the Mystique seems to have a greater balance point. I don't know if you can see that, but I feel like throughout this middle here that there's more security. And once again, when it comes to the very front, you can see it stays fairly flat. When I get to that last little part, it vaults. That last little part of the Mystique lifts up quite a bit. I feel that the Riedell does that as well. I just feel that the Riedell blade, which I believe is the Wilson Excel, has a little less of a secure balance point through the middle. So probably would give the blade to the Mystique. The last point after that is talking about the toe box, which the toe box is the area including the toes, over the toes, and on the way up to the instep. And in this case, I'm going to look at the volume of both. And I have to say, traditionally, Riedell works for a longer, skinnier foot that takes less volume, and the Jackson works better for that person who has more volume through the front and a little bit thinner in the back. But I have to say, looking at this, that both products seem to do a good job leaving a generous amount of toe box room. Okay. Also important to note, and we've talked about this I think on earlier episodes, skates are not your shoe size. Okay, we have here the size 3 from Riedell and the 3.5 from Jackson. Now when I put those insoles together, note that a Riedell 3 is pretty darn similar to the Jackson 3.5. And we do find that here at Skaters Landing too, that if somebody is in the Riedell, their Jackson size is about half size larger. So in this case, the 3 of the Riedell is equivalent to a 3.5 of the Jackson. So hopefully you've picked up some tips and you've learned more about the Jackson Mystique and the Riedell 15 and adult version being the 115. So for SkatersLandingTV.com, I'm Chris Bartlett. Happy skate shopping!